Welcome to another episode of Oshkosh Area Politics. My name is Ben Schneider, and I am once again joined by Paul Esslinger, former mayor of the city of Oshkosh. And today we'll be discussing some issues regarding the school district. And Paul, I'd like to welcome you once again to another episode.
It's an honor and a pleasure to be here, Ben.
You're too kind, Paul.
I know it.
Well, the school district's been very busy.
Yep.
And I think what they have proven, it's very easy to spend other people's money. So what are your thoughts on what's going on with the school district regarding some recent headlines that have hit the local print media?
Well, I think going back maybe a little ways back when you were on the school board, I had some issues with the school district spending money foolishly when you were on there, and you had these long meetings and you were getting beaten up on a daily basis trying to, pull the reins in, if you will,
Provide
a little bit.
balance.
Yeah, provide some balance. And clearly it didn't work. And then we have now 7 fiscal liberals on the school board. And just when I thought things couldn't get worse, they are so far out now, Ben, the Hubble telescope can't find these people. Some of the things that we'll talk about today, it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing how they can do some of the things they do and how easy it is to spend other people's money. And when we talk about solar water heaters, putting in new schools, I'd like to know how many school board members have solar water heaters in their homes, and if they're going to be ripping out their old ones and putting those in because they're sustainable and they're environmental.
And just to clarify, the school district asked in an April of 2012 referendum for $12.995 million for a new Oak Lawn school, Oak Lawn replacement school. And the viewers should know that the contract came under bid. The bids came underneath the $13 million referendum allowance,
Right.
And it came in over $2 million under. And the school district decided to have this grab bag for cash. They decided to add, iPod docks. They decided to add
Internet cafe.
Yeah, internet cafe, terrazzo floor,
Climbing
walls. Gold-plated bubblers. No, I'm just kidding. They
had a
decided,
canopy outside the front, so when the limos drove up, the kids wouldn't get wet as they came out.
and really probably the most egregious. Well, what we're just talking about was the solar water heater. And really, the question I have is, and the Northwestern talked about this, and I thought they had a proper editorial on this in terms of the misguided spending, but also point out that the Northwestern endorsed the majority of these individuals that constantly vote for misguided spending. The school board decided to add a solar water heater, for example. And I know one board member campaigned as a candidate, and even before this individual ran for school board, on don't do any project unless there's a couple-year payback. I'd like to know what the payback is for solar water heater. I'd like to know how many school board members that voted in favor of adding a solar water heater have a solar water heater in their house. Mm-hmm. And I'd like to know how well a solar water heater works when the sun isn't shining.
Right.
You need a supplemental heat source. So really the break even on that, I'd like to know what the payback is. And that's just an example. I think the school district had a good example of returning that money they didn't need back to the taxpayers and not bond for that.
Well, and for me, Ben, what was even more disappointing, piling on, throwing salt in the wound, if you will, is we have a new superintendent of schools, Stan Mack, who basically, I think he was given time in the Northwestern to write a rebuttal, if you will, regarding the spending. And he justified the things that were in here, and I'm thinking, this is crazy. I mean, this is in the. I'm waiting for Rod Serling to walk in and say you have just entered the twilight zone with the things. You're going to save $3 million, and then you have the people just say, well, I don't want to save the $3 million. I want to take as many taxes as I can from my constituents, and I want to blow it in on this building.
Right, and the superintendent was quoted as saying, "We're really taking advantage of those dollars." And yeah, you're right. You are taking advantage of those dollars. You're taking advantage of the taxpayers. And it's really, let's just put it in our viewers, let's frame it this way for our viewers. If you're allowed to borrow, if you're approved for a $250,000 home loan and you talk to a contractor and you say, I want to build a house for $250,000. He says, boy, we can build you a really nice house for $250,000. However, if we do this and do that, I think we can come in a little less. So lo and behold, at the conclusion of the project, the builder says, I only needed $225,000. If it's your money, you're probably going to say, well, great, I'm going to borrow $25,000 less. But the school board majority would say, let's just take that $25,000.
We'll go to Hawaii, and we'll go to Tahiti, and
Yep.
we'll get a new BMW or whatever. Whatever.
That's exactly it. And that's really an unfortunate thing. Dollars are precious. I think, unfortunately, a growing percentage of elected officials don't realize that when you have the taxpayer's checkbook and you're authorized to write checks on the taxpayer's checkbook, it's an awesome responsibility. And you demonstrate that responsibility through prudence and through proper resolutions and proper actions. And they've been doing the opposite, in my opinion. And, solar water heaters, climbing walls, iPod dock stations. I don't believe it covered the iPods. I mean, one of those coming next.
Right.
And it's just really, it's an example in
can we get some smartphones? Maybe President Obama. I know there's Obama phones. I don't know if maybe we can get some Obama phones, get some smartphones. Then we can have little charging stations, maybe like in the hallways or something. You can leave your phone out in the hallway between classes, and you can plug it in and charge your phone.
Yeah, it's well, and it's really interesting, Paul. This has just been a continuation this summer, after the school board realized that they had a $3.5 million surplus because of Act 10. The school board hired special ed teachers and paid for them out of fund balance, which fund balance for our viewers is
your savings account.
Is one-time money.
Right.
They hired a community-based learning coordinator out of fund balance, one-time money. So they hired permanent long-term positions with one-time money.
Which will run you a structural deficit.
And I'm here to tell you that they're doing this deliberately because they're making the case for an operational referendum, because there are deficits as far as the eye can see. And I also want to just point out for our viewers that this borrowing is one component of the budget. The other component is the over $100 million of tax revenue they receive per fiscal year. Over $100 million they receive.
Their operating budget.
In addition to the $35 million that they borrowed this year alone. So for those people that say they don't have any money, they have over $100 million. So do the math. If they're spending currently $100 million this year, over the last decade, they spent nearly $1 billion. And then in the forecast in the future, over the next decade, they'll spend over $1 billion in the Oshkosh Area School District. So in other words, they will spend over $1 billion over the next 10 years, and it's not enough money. With this group of individuals, their only solution is to raise taxes and to extract and to borrow money. And it's really easy, as evidenced by what they've done. And so far this year, they borrowed the $13 million, which the public spoke, and I respect that. 70% of the people said yes to a new Oak Lawn, in part because of the scare tactics.
The scare tactics that went into it.
Sending kids to Appleton if they didn't support the referendum, and it's just kind of ridiculous.
You'd have to get your kid up at 4 in the morning, take them to the airport so they could get to their school by 8, or whatever.
So in addition to the $13 million authorized by the taxpayers, the board on their own borrowed $21 million for energy improvements. And I'd like to know what the payback is on that. So that's a 20-year loan that they borrowed for energy efficiency exemption. But really what's not being told here is I'd like to know, school district, what is your long-range plan? What schools are going to stay open? Because we're in decline enrollment. What schools will stay open? And how can we ensure that the $21 million that you're borrowing will go into schools that will stay open in a few years? So really, they don't have a long-range plan. They're just basically winging it, and it's upsetting because there are no do-overs. We have to get it right for our children's educational sake, and they're taking $100 million on an annual basis through property taxes, et cetera, state aid, spending it, and there's very little accountability. So we should actually demand more, and we should expect more.
Well, the other thing that you're forgetting to mention here is they've spent over $1 billion in the last 10 years. And tell me, how much was the estimate in deferred maintenance that we have in this district? So, and let me answer it, I think it was about $100 million give or take.
yeah.
A million here, a million there. So you're
Yeah,
talking about some
come
money.
on.
But so you've spent over $1 billion. You have 75 to $100 million in deferred maintenance, and then you're talking about putting in terrazzo floors and internet cafes for elementary school kids. And I mean, seriously, Ben, and with all due respect, that's nuts. Can you defend? I mean, I know you can't defend it, but is there, as someone who served on a school board, is there something in the back of your head that says, well, here's why they did it? And I know the answer is it's for the children, but that's such a ridiculous argument. We've gone over that in our liberal speak before. They use that a lot. But I mean, is there any logical or rational reason that you would do these things?
Well, I think it's the school district, the school board is suffering from a deficiency in balance. They're extremely imbalanced, so you have groupthink, and when the majority feels a certain way, there's no one to say, wait a minute, let's tap the brakes. Let's cancel cruise control here. Let's stop the autopilot because we're going directly for a dead-end road. And in the last decade, our property taxes have doubled. And as you stated, and actually just to correct, it's been about last 11 years approximately I want to state, that the district has spent over $1 billion on education in Oshkosh. And so really, after they spent that much money in the last decade, the question needs to be asked, how much is enough, school board? We're giving you over $100 million this year. You just borrowed over $35 million this year. You're talking about, in code, more referendums in the future to borrow more money for a South Side school. And I'm predicting that in the next 12 months, we probably will see another referendum, or certainly the robust planning stages for another referendum for a South Side school. Probably still won't have a long-range plan by then to build a new South Side school, and probably a referendum to exceed revenue caps. And they are hiring. There's just a lack of a plan. And it's really concerning because, again, when you're dealing with children's education, there is no do-overs. And if they don't do it right, our children will suffer. And they have suffered for the last many years because the schools, the board majority have cut kids' programs to fund these unsustainable practices, which I find it really interesting because those in the majority that claim to be advocates for the kids come election time, it's for the kids. They're the ones that are actually cutting the kids' programs to fund these egregious unsustainable practices.
Well, if they want to build a new school on the south side, I'll be completely in favor of it as long as they have solar water heaters. That's it for me.
Really?
That'll throw me over.
That's your litmus test? Okay.
Of course, I'm being facetious, but tell me, Ben, with Governor Walker's budget, Act 10, it handed them a $3.5 million surplus. I think I was watching one of the meetings. They didn't know what to do with the $3.5 million. It's scary. You give $3.5 million to 7 people that are liberal. Refresh my memory. What happened to that money? Do you know what they did with it?
Yeah. Before I get there, let me just recap how we got into that situation. Before Act 10 even was discussed, even before Scott Walker won election in 2010, the school board projected a $1.5 million deficit for that fiscal year. Mm-hmm. That concluded with a $3.5 million surplus. The school district used some money to accelerate some. Actually, there was a wide array of things that they did, but basically the bulk of what they did is they banked the money. They actually put it in fund balance, and to try to shore up, to try to diminish the need for short-term borrowing. So, I give them credit for that. However, after they did that, after they realized and knew that they were going to have a $3.5 million surplus, they still went ahead anyway and raised class sizes in some key areas. So it begs the question: if you know that your fiscal situation is self-healing, in part because, or is somewhat self-healing, or is not as bad as you projected, and you have a big surplus, why would you use one-time money to hire permanent positions? Mm-hmm. Why wouldn't you try to restore some valuable programs that have been cut in the past? So what they do is they constantly are looking for something new that's unproven, perhaps, versus restoring something that they had a cut that was proven. And I go back to about 6 years ago, during a really tough budget cycle, when the board majority cut the teen pregnancy program and that has not been restored. But yet there was a $3.5 million surplus, and none of the 7 advocates for kids fought to restore a program. And I know we can all be judgmental and say, well, children shouldn't get themselves in a situation, but kids do, and I think we need to be a safety net for those children.
Right.
And that the board majority, I think you demonstrate your commitment based on priorities. And I think they dropped the ball on that. And I think I just think it's really interesting how quietly in the last couple months the board borrowed more in the last couple months than they have in the past decade.
Okay.
And this is long-term borrowing.
Can I bring up the next topic here?
Sure.
Okay. I read this recently, came to light. There was a teacher over at Oshkosh North, the name's really not important, not going to bring it up, that since 2003, this individual had been disciplined 8 times for, quite frankly, I don't even know what it is, inappropriate behavior or whatever it was. You were on the board from 2003 until 2011, whatever it was. This person obviously was an issue. Was the school board ever briefed on this issue?
I don't recall, and much of that never rises to the level of the board, and I think it's in part because the administrators try to deal with that internally, and they try to mentor that individual. But I was really taken by surprise when I read that in the local print media.
Well, here's where I have the issue, Ben. I understand that the administration needs to take care of these issues, but on the backside, when you're going to do what I'm going to mention here, when you get yourself into these situations, you need to go to your board and craft a different policy. You need to go to the state and have some laws changed, because here's what happened to this individual. So the school district didn't get themselves into a lawsuit. This individual, as she was leaving, got a letter of recommendation, okay? You were disciplined 8 times. As you're leaving, you get a letter of recommendation. That's bizarre on its face. You get 2 weeks of wages as you're leaving, being disciplined 8 times. And you get 2 years of full health care benefits. The health care benefits alone are going to cost the taxpayers between $35,000 and $40,000. So the message that you're getting here is, go ahead and do whatever you want to do. You can be disciplined as many times as you want to be disciplined. And if we decide to get rid of you, you'll be rewarded for that discipline, or for the inactivity, or not inactivity, the activity, inappropriate activity that you're doing while you're employed. As the taxpayers are employing you, paying you $50,000, $60,000 a year in your salary, not me mentioning your benefits. So why doesn't the school district get involved in some of these things if you have this idiotic stuff going on? And by the way, our good friends at the Oshkosh Northwestern editorial board staff thought this was great. This is a great idea as you're shoving this person out the door to give them a golden umbrella.
Right, and actually, I don't know if you want to hold up the article. I don't know when was that?
That was Sunday, November 11th in the Northwestern.
Okay, and it says teacher got letter following resignation.
Right.
And I really just ask our viewers, if you worked in a job for 20 plus years, and in 2003, your actions or interactions resulted in disciplinary action, letters in your file, basically notation of insufficient performance from 2003 until really recently, and 8 different times, multiple occasions, where it rose to the level of the severity where someone writes something in your letter. Do you think you'd be fired? Or do you think that someone would let you continue to skate 8 different times, and then on the 8th time, you negotiate with that employee and say, well, I tell you what, we're gonna pay your health insurance, full health insurance for 2 years, plus we're gonna give you 2 weeks salary, and we're gonna write you a glowing letter, letter of recommendation. I submit to you that there is not a job or employer in the city of Oshkosh or in this community that will do that. The reason why that is upsetting is the taxpayers are paying basically $40,000 from what apparently is rewarding someone for someone that should be punished. And what's also upsetting is our local print media that is supposed to be a source of integrity and
A watchdog for the taxpayers.
A watchdog, wrote a opine that is good practice, good business practice. There is not a business out there that would survive that would allow people the golden parachute as a result of poor performance or inaction, and as reported by the Northwestern Reporter.
Yeah.
So the Northwestern Reporter did a very good job of investigative journalism.
Absolutely.
I was unaware of this as a board member of roughly 8 of those years, and it really wasn't brought to our attention. But it's just upsetting that people would have that low of a standard for the taxpayers' dollars to pay health insurance for 2 years. And the folks at home need to realize the insurance that you get in the Oshkosh School District is second to none. I mean, it's a Cadillac plan. So we're looking at, like you said, approximately $36,000, between $35,000 and $40,000 over the next 2 years. Mm-hmm. It's unheard of.
Right.
Couple that with terrazzo floors, solar water heaters, climbing walls, et cetera, et cetera. It's if you piece together the evidence, it's upsetting, and that's why no amount of money will be enough for this body. And incidentally enough, in another few weeks, individuals can take out nomination papers and run for school board. And I would encourage anybody that wants to make a contribution, that wants to provide balance and have a voice, to consider taking out nomination papers. They can contact us through Facebook. They can contact us, give us a call at home, and I'll help guide people and tell them what they need to do. It's really simple. Just fill out nomination forms, declaration of candidacy, get about 110 signatures, and you're on the ballot in the April election. And if there's not more than 4 people running for this upcoming election, there won't even be a primary.
Right.
And what this body has told us is we need balance and moderation, and this groupthink is not.
It's completely out of whack. And by the way, the person that wrote this story was Adam Rodewall, and I've dealt with Adam Rodewall, me running for the 54th Assembly District. Adam did a great job in this article here, and he's done some really good work recently that I've read too. So kudos to him. But I just want to. This is so crazy, Ben. I want to recap this because people are probably saying, I don't think I just understood what Ben and Paul were talking about. So folks, this is the situation. You had a teacher in the Oshkosh Area School District since 2003 till basically now, was disciplined 8 times for various infractions. 8 times for various infractions. So what the school board decided to do, they're going to let this person go, and while they let the person go, the person got a letter of recommendation, basically saying what a swell person this person is, what a great job the person does, 2 weeks of wages as she's walking out the door, and you're paying for 2 full years of health care benefits, which is to the tune of $35,000-$40,000. So you working in the in the private industry, go to your boss and say, if I get disciplined 8 times in the next 8 or 9 years, first of all, can I do that? And then when you want to get rid of me, can I get 2 weeks of wages, a letter of recommendation, and full health care? And see how fast your boss laughs at you for saying something so ridiculously stupid.
Well, and the other issue that I think is very important to mention, and the school board and the school system exists to serve the students and make sure those students are prepared and ready for the next phase of their life upon graduation. And I look at this another way. The school administration knowingly, for the lack of a better term, kicked the problem down the road, allowed this lack of professionalism or high standard of teaching to be in the classroom.
Yeah.
And students, I believe, were not serviced properly.
No.
And I think this tolerance, they're so intolerant for people that want you to be a little more reasonable, moderate, balanced. And then when you start talking about eliminating this type of low performance, they get angry at the person that wants to uphold the standard.
Right.
And I don't think it's unreasonable to say, teachers are held to a high standard. I mean, teaching is a wonderful profession.
You're darn right it is.
They do one of the most important jobs in society, and to hold that wonderful profession to a high standard, and certainly if someone falls short of that standard, you mentor them if they can be mentored. But to allow that to continue for almost 8 or 9 years, I mean, that's just unbelievable.
I mean,
And-
kids in the district had to deal with this teacher with these various activities that long.
And we don't know what the behavior was, and I'm sure it was. I mean, it wasn't illegal behavior, but I believe the behavior relates to students not being taught to the level that they need to be taught to.
Well, and the fallback argument for the school district is, well, we had to do this or we could get sued. Well, you know what? As a taxpayer, I mean, with the terrazzo floors and all this nonsense, if you're going to spend money on that, it's about time we say enough of this nonsense. We're going to put our foot down. We're not going to give you a letter of recommendation. We're not going to give you 2 weeks' wages. We're not going to give you full health care benefits for 2 years. You're going to get out the door, and you're going to get out now. And if you want to sue the district, you go ahead and sue the district and see what the taxpayers think of you suing the district because of the activities or inactivities or whatever you're doing. You're not going to look too good. And how much is it going to cost that individual to try to sue the district? Take that to a jury.
Well, right. And what's interesting in the editorial, they opine that was wise business move. It was a calculated risk because the attorney speculated that they may or may not lose come judgment time. But there is a thing called principle. I mean, if someone said to you, if you open your car door at a parking lot, and someone got out and said, "Boy, you hit my car. My neck is all crooked now. I'm going to sue you for whiplash." I don't care how wealthy you are. Your attorney's going to say that's a baseless claim. But it seems like with education, the attorneys and the administration, they always run a calculated risk, and the deck is always stated in favor of the person that's not doing their job. And there's a time where you have to stand on principle and say, it's wrong to reward approximately 9 years worth of disciplinary action, hour after hour, class after class, year after year of underperformance, and we're not going to reward this. We're going to send a message to all the other 1,000+ employees that you're not going to be rewarded and you're not going to be tolerated. And if you think that you're going to shake us down for money, it's not going to happen. And I as a taxpayer, as a fiscal conservative, I'd be willing to take that risk on principle.
Well, and Ben,
We have about a minute left.
okay, real quick. As parents, we can send our kids to public school or private school. We have some great private schools here in Oshkosh. So as a parent, you're looking at this saying, my taxes are going to this. How many other teachers are doing this stuff? You may want to take your child out of the public school and put it in a private, which nets, about $11,000 less each year for this district. So why don't we say, here in the Oshkosh Area School District, we're going to have a high standard for teachers.
That's exactly right. And I mean, it's not unreasonable to have a high standard. And I would just simply like to invite our viewers, if you'd like to be on this program, you'd like to challenge us, contact us through Facebook or contact us through email. Until then, on behalf of Paul Esslinger and Oshkosh Area Politics, good night and God bless, and thanks for joining.